Hi, everybody, and welcome to Friday Night Flock Talk. I'm Robin Sullivan of the Leather Elves. It's good to be back at home after seeing you all at when we were live at Parrot Festival in Houston, which was great fun. And I want to thank you for tuning into that. Nick just put up in the corner there. We've got a sale going on right now at the Leather Elves, 40% off through Valentine's Day. Enter code HEART, HEART, at checkout for 40% off. I also have to do the reminders. I haven't done them for a while. I didn't do them, when we were live in Houston because it was just overwhelming to have a room full of people in addition to all of you at home. But you can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you won't miss out on any of the Friday Night Flock Talks. We've got a lot of really cool people scheduled. When I was in Houston, I set up a bunch of flock talks while I was there. And one of the people that I was lucky enough to talk to and spend some time with was my guest for tonight. And this gentleman, Taylor Hains, does some stuff that, I don't even know. When I did the promo, I called it the magic of the science of genomics. And I meant it because it's magical. Yeah, Ashley, I saw your comment, sitting here with my notebook ready to be confused. So Taylor,
You
you're going
know
to
what?
fix that for all of us.
No, you know what? Like, what was it? I walked by Bennett Hennessy and he looked, and we're doing a collaborative project together. And he looks at me and goes, Taylor, I'm trying to remember all the stuff I learned in like high school and college and like think deleterious mutation. It just means bad genes. Why do they use a word like deleterious? It's a bunch of people trying to sound smart and confuse people. So you know what? Don't get confused. Don't let that stupor go over your face.
And I think that's what happens. We go, oh, okay, we know that birds are really cool and we can work on their behavior and we can enrich their lives and we can have them as companions. But wait, what? What do you mean? There's more going on.
I,
So I guess first of all, I'm going to ask this. Define or explain genomics,
oh,
please.
okay.
So now I've set
So
us all up for an hour-long discussion. Go ahead.
no. You, the one thing I have learned basically that I have my really good friends in the museum, and I say the reason why we're good friends is because when I say things, you guys clutch your pearls and then let go. Most of the time, when I say things, people clutch their pearls and just go and walk away. They go like, "It's what?" Genomics is okay. Number one, I call it the voodoo science because you can't see what you're working with. So you kind of go like this.
Mhm.
I hope there's DNA in this sample. There may not be. I don't. It might be the bird I'm looking at. It might be the human that collected it, or the rodent that walked into the bird's cage. Like it, there might. You don't see it. So
Mhm.
one of the methods I first learned basically was you add ethanol to the samples. You put a paper towel over the plate, and you turn it upside down and you spin it. But because you like made it ice cold beforehand, the DNA basically freezes to the bottom, but now is the top. So the ethanol pours out, but the DNA stays in there. And I looked at the person who taught me this, and all he goes, the guy who came up with this method must have been really high because I would never have done this.
Yeah, and I think, when we really get down to it, Taylor, there's a lot of that in science and scientific discoveries. It's things that people go, "Who thought of this? What is this all about?" So, all right, so we're
To answer
studying
your
DNA.
question, yeah, to answer your question about what is genomics, and the reason I said ooh is because genetics is the study of a gene, and genomics is the study of a gene or a lot of genes. So basically, genetics, when we originally did it, they were only amplifying a single gene region on. So if anyone's been to my talks, you should know that we have the mitochondria, which, if you remember your high school biology, is the powerhouse of the cell. It has its own mitochondria, and that is inherited by the mother. And then you have the nuclear genome that encodes everything that we are, and you get one copy from your mom, one copy from your dad. And so genomics is the study of all of that together.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
how it comes about, how it's maintained, how it codes you as a person, how it codes as a disease, and you can use it for a variety of things. Hell, I mean, for some people that are probably here, because I can't see the list of names, um, I'm genotyping their birds so that if their birds get stolen and then the police go, this, are you sure this is your bird? I go, I guess, but we already have a genetic profile for my bird. And if that bird matches, that person stole my bird. It's a variety of things you can
So
do with genetics.
how all right, so how did you decide this is what you wanted to work on?
Funny story. So I
I
always
knew it
loved
would be.
animals. It's always a funny story with me. It's if everyone knows it, everyone goes, "Oh, that's Taylor." Like when I got stuck in that elevator at Parrot Fest.
Oh,
People were texting me the next morning going like this when I was there on time still. FYI, they're going like this. Are you stuck in the elevator again? I'm like this. Yeah, really.
just so you all
Um,
know, Taylor was put on at 8:30 in the morning, right? Which we were all kind of concerned was not the best plan, but it worked and he made it. But he did get stuck in the elevator over the course of the event for a brief, it probably didn't feel very brief, but for a period of time. So yeah, so there is that. But okay, so back to the story. How did you decide this is what you wanted to do?
I always loved animals, and I wanted to be a zoologist, paleontologist. But some of my family said, you should really think about something that makes more money. Um, because obviously zookeepers are underappreciated for what they do and underpaid. Well, I mean, most staff in zoos are, for that matter of fact. So they were thinking in that realm. Um, I was really good at genetics and biology. The Punnett squares, I love them. I love those things. I don't know why. It was my weird little thing. And I can remember how DNA splits and combines, whatever. But then I went into poli sci at Columbia University, which I eventually found my crowd, which was in um, the ecology and evolutionary department. And the only reason I realized what I really wanted to do was because they had an animal behavior class. And I was not feeling going through college was good for me. And then I decided to get a budgie again. But
It's
that
those
budgie hated
budgies,
my
they're
guts.
good for every time.
But the budgie hated my guts. It loved one of my friends, but it hated my guts because I took it on the plane and this woman made me walk through the airport security with it in my hand, and it was a baby, so he was trying to get out of my hand and panicking. And after that moment, he hated me, but loved one of my friends. So I ended up giving him up for adoption, and then I got a crimson belly. But because of that budgie, I joined my department, and they were like, "Oh, you can do conservation genomics." And I'm like, "Wait, what is this?" You can use genomics to help conservation issues. And obviously we study evolutionary questions, and that turned into what I'm doing now. Um, my We have to do a thesis, and I happen to randomly reach out to a professor at the American Museum of Natural History about was doing conservation genomics on anything and on everything. And so I sat down with him, and he's all, I guess, so I don't know if this is of interest of you, but we're doing a project on scarlet macaws, but I don't know if you like parrots. I'm all, no, no, no. The stars align. My uncle says I shit gold because everything I've done just ends up leading to something I love and cool. Um, so
Here we
so
go. So all right. So the name was the biological Game of Thrones is ridiculously intriguing. So what have you been working on recently, or what have you been working on? We know you do work, so even though you love
yes,
it,
I do
it's
work.
still work.
Yeah, I love it. It does work. And for everyone that's here that they've given me a sample, I will get you results soon, like this in the next 2 weeks, because literally I've been powering through a bunch of crap. Um, and literally I say a bunch of crap. Because the first thing that we've learned is so basically chromosomes. So if we go to the next slide, there's birds in general have this very weird structure. Um, there's GC content, um, which is basically just the percentage of G's and C's in a genome, and that's a real big feature. Like there's a mathematics behind it, which I still don't quite explain, so I won't bother to bore you all with that. But there's a difference between different parts of the genome, different organisms. There's repeat content, so basically there are repetitive parts of the genome. A lot of it. They used to call it junk DNA. Um, like salamander genomes can be 14 gigabase pairs. Ours is 3.5, 3.2. A bird's is 1.2.
Huh.
And,
Okay.
so a salamander is a small organism and has a huge genome. It's like, what you might think genome size correlates to the size of the organism or the complexity of its brain, but it really doesn't actually. So they're like, what's going on there? And then my favorite thing in the world now, microchromosomes. And so there's a karyotype. I forgot what bird species. But the underlying part is the first 10. Maybe the first 11 or 12 are called macrochromosomes, and the rest are micro. And you can see they just get smaller and smaller. There's no cutoff. Um,
Hmm.
so a talk I gave at the Plant and Animal Genomes Conference, which was before Parrot Fest, I was like, "These microchromosomes make me cry very often and frequently, and now I'm just okay with crying in public. Like, why won't this stuff work already?" Um, and you can see a variety of different taxa. Birds have microchromosomes. Mammals don't. Everyone that works on mammals, I call them privileged. I go model organism privilege, and I go mammalian privilege. Because it's just big, large chromosomes, and so they're not difficult to assemble. In birds, they are. Um,
Hmm.
and then the next part is bird chromosome evolution. If we go to the next slide, there's a figure that, and I will try to explain these two so people like don't get overwhelmed by all the lines and colors. But
By
basically,
the pretty
each solid
pictures?
it's a pretty picture. I actually the reason I love science so much is because of the pretty pictures and the colors. I
Mhm.
memorize papers based on the pretty colors. I'm like, oh, this figure had a map with these different colors that really worked really well that I can never actually repeat. But so each solid bar is a chromosome. So you can see there is the Z. There's 1, 2 on the emu, and then each of those gray lines that are typically gray, but they're highlighted in some, are areas of matching between the organisms. So that when you go from the emu into the chicken to the passerin, you can see that there's some movement around, but there's not a lot. You get into parrots, and especially those middle ones, those colored ones, become a hot mess.
Huh.
And I showed this initial image to my advisors, and they're just like, Taylor, you broke our brains because we've always thought because birds have relatively a similar number of chromosomes that there's nothing really happening. There's actually a lot happening, and in parrots, it gets even worse. It gets not worse, but more fun, which is why I call it a biological Game of Thrones. What you expect will never happen. You'll always be at the edge of your seat. If you expect to know something, you're not. We know nothing. As they said to Jon Snow, you know nothing, Jon Snow.
It's true.
So I'm barreling through right now. And so far it's worked.
So the waves that happen, what do
Yeah.
those signify?
Rearrangement. So like when the chromosomes start, so basically there's inversion. So when a chromosome flips around, a
Mhm.
translocation, when it literally a part just moves to another region. Um, those ones where you see, like, let's say you look at the orange and the green, like they'll go through the tree and then they'll fuse. Like the orange fuses with the purple. That's a fusion.
Mhm.
But when it's split apart, it's a fission.
Okay.
And so the genome reorganizes the way there's one chromosome, chromosome 25, that fuses to the Z, and chromosome 11 also fuses to the Z in parrots. So those are those highlighted colors at the right side of it. Um,
Mhm.
that rearrangement is another form of genetic variation, besides just those difference in the A's, T's, C's, and G's. Um, So there's a professor here that works on plant conservation, and he's always because I'm one of the few people that does does actual like we have the genomics, let's apply it to conservation in a meaningful way. So like, what do the
Mhm.
breeders want to know about when they're breeding a critically endangered species? Like, I need to know what you would want to know because I can assume, but I never. It might be useless information for you. Um,
Mhm.
so one of them always goes, "Oh, could we use CRISPR, which is basically how you insert and genetically modify an organism to like save some plant species or whatnot?" And I'm like, "We know so little about the genome. We're going to create a mutant plant that eats people for fun."
It's
I'm a
not where
sci-fi
we
nerd,
wanna
so I
go.
always come up with the worst case scenario. Um, Worst possible case scenario all the way. Um, so if we go to the next slide, like we're just going to keep going through the slides because I think this is the best way.
Yeah.
Um, there are about 400 species of parrots. About one third of them are threatened, and it's mostly due. Obviously, most of us know what the threats are: habitat loss, the illegal wildlife trade. A lot of the time, when I first started working with bird breeders and birds, I remember there was one person that was just like, "This, why would you want to work with bird breeders? They're such bad people." And my advisors kind of just like looked down and going like this. oh shit's gonna hit the fan. Because I literally just was like, I ripped her apart. She didn't talk to me for about 6 months after that. Um, and you see there's cockatoos and macaws, so you can see where on the tree there's so many species in the middle. The diversity of parrots is phenomenal, which is why I love them so much. Um, so if anyone has a question about what's more related to what, I can send you this tree because the paper's already published, but you can't even see the tree on it. And then there's obviously some still texts that are missing, like the Cuban macaw. I did a phylogeny to figure
Mhm.
out what that is. It's not a hybrid.
Yeah,
Uh,
expand on that, Taylor, because I think there are probably a few people who are listening who might not know about that. Can you
so the
explain to people
Cuban macaw,
what's happening? Yeah.
yeah, the Cuban macaw is an extinct species of a member of the Ara genus. I think it's actually the next slide that we have an Ara tree. Um, but Ara consists of 8 species. Yep, exactly. And so this is actually the current phylogeny of Ara. So that is the green wing, the scarlet, the blue and gold, the blue throated, the red fronted, the severe, the military, and the bouffants. And so these are all their scientific names, and this is also the diploid number that is associated with them. Now, the Cuban macaw. So now, okay, so if anyone knows their scientific names, so I'm going to start from the bottom. Ara militaris, the military. Ara ambiguus, the bouffants. Ara chloroptera, the green wing. Ara macaw, the scarlet. Ara glaucocalaris, which is the blue throat. Ara aruna, the blue and gold. Ara rubigenes, the red fronted. And then Ara cervus, the severe. The Cuban is actually diverged right before the blues and the greens diverged.
Okay.
And it seems to be its own species. It just happened to go
Wow.
extinct. And I know Voren created a hybrid,
Mhm.
3 species hybrid. And one of the species was actually a premolus. So that's the headed, the illagers. I forgot, I think it was like yellow collared. I'm probably wrong
Mhm.
about that, but it was something. And it looked very much like a Cuban. So
Okay.
everyone's thinking that the Cuban might be a product of natural hybridization. I
Mhm.
don't think it is.
Okay.
Um, and part of the interesting thing with macaws is the hybrids, they change colors like every second generation. Some people have told me, like, oh, yeah, we have gotten pretty much down trying to predict what color we'll get, but sometimes it's a little weird.
So you mentioned I'm going to go off on a little tangent here. As far as naturally occurring hybrids, because I know
Yeah.
that there are some folks out there who disagree that that occurs, and we know that it does occur. Um,
Yes.
how does your work apply to something like that?
So,
How do we make that better known or more
and it's a
available to
beautiful thing
people?
you asked that. It's a beautiful reason. It's a beautiful thing you asked that because it relates to the conclusion that I was only actually able to figure out just a month ago before my presentation because I finally got the data all put together in a way that I'm like, oh, this makes sense. Um, in cockatoos, all throughout Kakatuidae, not just in the genus Kakatua, which if we think about the whole larger group, it includes from the major Mitchells to the Corellas to the Whites. Um, the gang hybridizes with a baride in the wild. There are reports and there
Mhm.
are pictures of hybrids
Right.
walking around. Um, and however, in comparison, Ara, and I know this will be contentious, but I've spoken with a bunch of people at Bennett, Tennessee, Don Brightsmith, a bunch of people. Ara macaws most likely, and I say most likely, do not hybridize in the wild as frequently as a cockatoo does. Now, people will
Mhm.
say they've seen a Catalina flying or a Verta, and they'll have pictures. However, the issue lies, and there's a professor, and I forgot what city she's in Brazil, that she did a big project on the hyacinth and made it less endangered in the region. But there are harlequins flying around.
Huh.
And everyone, there was a visiting professor here in herpetology, and he was like, "Oh no, these are wild." And I'm like, "Bro, when you're in Florida and you see a blue and gold or a green wing flying around, you know it was a pet because we don't have them there. In Brazil,
Right.
they have them, so there's no you can't necessarily know if there was an escaped bird or a released pet or an escaped pet
Right.
that paired up. And
Yeah.
so my thought is any of the hybrids we see are most likely a product of pets that escaped or that were released.
Mhm.
Um, because from I gathered from what the breeders have told me and what my research shows, um, that the primary mode of isolation in parrots is behavioral. So when you raise them in
Yeah.
multi-species flocks, you break down that barrier.
Right. And, and that's from the behavior science side of things. It's kind of an interesting dynamic, and that's, people are it's some people are all behind hybridization, some people are not. And years ago, Matt Baird, I don't know, I'm sure you
Yes.
talked to Matt at our festival. And for those of you that don't know, Matt is from Australia, and he is a breeder, and he he did a presentation on natural hybridization, and it was just very eye opening. And I think that's the information that you're referring
And
to.
Matt was the one that initially, like, I mean, we were already doing cockatoos, but he's the one. And there's obviously, I'm going to talk about the chromosome stuff, but we're also doing color mutations now because of piece in
Mhm.
like people like Grover Wonderland, wonderful. Like his name, I looked at it and go like, this must not be a last real name because it's like it looks too perfect. Is his last name?
Mhm.
Jason Shane, and then Matt also gave me a bunch of wants me to do a bunch of samples so we can figure out the genes or what's causing color mutation. So I'm going to be talking about a little bit about that. But again, this is one thing, and Rick Jordan said this during his talk. There's a lot of information in the agriculture community, pet owners, pet breeders, that should be shared.
Mhm.
And it's funny because a lot of the people in academia were pushing back about me going to Parrot Fest, going to AFA every year and whatnot. And number one, I go because I like you all. Like I adore almost all of you. There's not someone I've met that I don't really like that much. My parents met Steve Duncan and Sharon Duncan, and they said, "This is your extended family." I'm like, "Yeah." And they
Mhm.
give me samples, and they give me knowledge that basically breaks all the scientists' brains, going like, "What? This actually happens?" Like, and then we can actually move forward in things. So the only problem I have with agriculture is you guys haven't codified anything into real articles or textbooks. But then I understand also why, because scientists are stupid, socially stupid.
Well, no, I think part of it, Taylor, is that for years and years, it was the good old boy network. And it wasn't, you don't share anything because then somebody's going to learn your secrets and they're going to take over your business. And, we went through that phase. And I'm not going to say that's all gone. But I think, people like you sharing with us, we've got a lot of, companion parrot owners online tonight, and it'll get watched by, others. And the thing is, Frank says, can't we just ask ancestor.com? It's true.
I'm ancestor.com for the birds.
There you go. This is the man you need to talk to, Frank. And we just, I think it's a matter of sharing this information, getting people comfortable with it. I mean, for years and years, behavior science used to baffle people because they would, I can't think of all those terms. I can't figure out if it's positive or negative or reinforcement or punishment, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's a matter of getting past that technological piece, past that, the terminology, and just talking about things with people. And, as we talk and people listen to what you have to say, and we kind of tell you our side of things, it all makes it was Suzanne, I think, who said, maketh sense. It definitely does.
Even though
So, all
Terry just
right.
said confused already. I'm just like, I put my hands up in the air. But so if we go to the next slide, so basically the one thing I've been able to find so far. So this is a scintillating plot of the blue and gold's on the top, the blue throated's the next line, the red fronted. So you can see the large chromosomes, those macro chromosomes seem to be very much the same. And then
Mhm.
we have what I call the flippity floppity, um, because there's a bunch of changes in the smaller chromosomes. And so this is potentially why, and I need to actually do the math on how much of the genome the smaller chromosomes are in, but it's only about like 10,
Mhm.
15%, which is
Okay.
not a large portion. And the first thing one of my committee members said, my advisor said, "Ooh, I want to know what genes are on there." It may not be that important necessarily. So let's say, and that's potentially why, and We only know the number of chromosomes for the first one, and I'm estimating the number of chromosomes without an actual karyotype for the other ones. But like, I think Ara, the Bouffons, already has the same number of chromosomes as the military, which is 33 chromosome pairs.
Hmm.
Um, and again, all of there's hybrids of all of these birds, and there's hybrids of every parrot, of macaw parrot. Go to the
Right.
next slide. Cockatuidae
And
is a
back
hot
to, well,
mess.
for 1 second, back to the Ara, the military and the Bouffons. To me, that makes sense, because they are such similar birds. And you have to,
There's no
people
that.
say, "Oh, that's a military." And if you haven't seen them side by side, I think a lot of times people get confused.
I can't tell the difference with them until I call you or Carrie or Chris or Rick and go, "Hey, how do I tell the difference between a Scarlet or a Bouffons in the military when they're not next to each other? Because obviously there's a big size difference.
Right,
Um,
right.
but otherwise, I'm like this. Oh, um,
But that, so to me, that makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, however,
So,
the only species pair of macaws that's been karyotyped that we know the chromosome potentially another chromosome number is the scarlet and the greenwing. Scarlet has 68 chromosomes and the greenwing has 70. And the funny thing is their hybrid, a ruby, looks like a greenwing except for the facial feathers. And from a
right.
distance, you can't see that. So I did a tree in that. So the original tree that I did that was in the previous slide, it's not the real tree in there, which also has the Cuban. The score at that split is the lowest one. Everything
Okay.
else is like 100%.
Huh.
And so I think the only species pair that's actually hybridizing in the wild is the scarlet and the greenwing. Um, because it's not like their hybrids don't look like a Catalina or a Harlequin or a Milligold, or they don't look like a hybrid. They look like I mean, if you know what you're looking at, you're looking close up. It looks like a hybrid because those facial
Mhm.
feathers. But if you're looking from afar, you necessarily can't see those facial feathers.
Right.
Um, Also, there's a theory called Hub's principle, which apparently no one on my committee knew this, and they didn't even know the real name, but it's a common sense thing. Amanda, I was talking with Amanda, and she was talking with her about something, and she's like, "Yes, so when there's a shortage of mates for species, won't they hybridize?" And I'm all, Hub's principle.
All right. So that's going to be a trivia question some night.
It looks like he may have froze.
He did. I see that. Oh, you're back.
Yeah,
Okay.
no,
So,
I just realized I was like this on the screen. Um,
so, but did you hear me say that's going to be a trivia question some night on Friday
yeah, no,
Night
there
Flock
should be.
Talk
It's
Trivia?
called Hub's principle, the desperation. Yeah, it's the desperation hypothesis that when there's a
Okay.
shortage of mates, species that live in the same area will hybridize. Which
Hmm.
I think if there's hybridization in macaws or cockatoos, that's what drives it. It's because anyone that has a single male or female that they're looking for a mate for, like there's a reason why you're looking for a mate. It's not just sometimes so you can pair them up so you can have babies and sell them or reproduce, but also sometimes it's because that male is really wants a girlfriend and he is just like going crazy. Like I mean, the last wild Sphinx hybridized paired with an Illiger's female.
Yeah.
My last chapter is going to be on Illagers and Sphinxes. About the embryo didn't survive, and I'm trying to see whether or not, because I spoke with Cromwell. He's one of the nicest people I've met, actually. Um,
Yes.
I told him I've been emailing you for years. He's all, "Oh, I think you have my wrong email." I'm all, "I guess, thank God. I thought you hated my guts." Um, and he said we were monitoring that nest, and he said if there was anything, because Chris Tutchin said eggs can die for various reasons that are not genetic, but he said we were monitoring that nest. So if there was a fungal thing, a heat thing, or whatnot, we would have taken that egg, even if it was a hybrid. And so he thinks it might be more genetic. Chris Tutchin told me what to look for in the embryo, so we're trying to see whether or not they messed up. Because obviously the embryo is in the collections in Sao Paulo, um,
Hmm.
and they potentially did not take a picture of the egg when they cracked it open. So whether or not the wing was on the wherever the wing was positioned and whatnot, we probably don't have that information, sadly. But this is where breeders come into the play of like making really good science because I did not know obviously that So now I know if there's someone sends me a hybrid egg, please take a picture immediately when you crack it open without moving anything, so we
Mhm.
can see some of those morphologies that you guys most people would already know because it's a thing. But for me, I'm like, okay, that's incredibly helpful. So we can figure out whether or not, did it not survive because it couldn't hatch out because the wing was in the wrong place, or was the wing in the right place but it just died because of organ failure or something like that.
Right.
But the fact that that male paired up with an illagers, his only drive is to pass on his genes to the next generation. He
Mhm.
doesn't care necessarily. At the end of the day, if there's no females around, six of them around, he's gonna just want to pass on his genes to whom will take them.
Mhm. Well, I mean, it's,
And
and we talk about breeding, and it is the biological imperative. That's why this occurs. It's not a force thing. It's not, it's again, it goes back to when I first heard Matt talking about hybrids in the wild, and and Susanna does say it may apply to some humans, which is absolutely
it
true.
totally does. It totally does.
I think we've all had those dates, but, no, and I think it's important for people to think of it in those terms, that, it's not the big horrible thing. It's just something that may not be appropriate in certain settings.
No,
Does that make
and
sense?
so no, it does. And so sometimes one of the questions I would love to answer with genetics eventually is whether or not, let's say you have hybrids in captivity. Well, does hybridization occur in the wild? And does it at what rate? So can we simulate that in captivity so we can still use, let's say, between the two scarlet subspecies, and let's just say for argument that there's only the two, because I know Tony posted a picture, made a post that I was just like, bro, really, you make my job so much harder. Um, and there is some potential integration between those two subspecies. So then we don't have to completely knock out. If let's say we do have hybrid scarlets between those subspecies, we don't have to throw them out completely.
Mhm.
And that's an important thing to know.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone talks about genetic purity of a species, and I'm like, yes, but we define a species. That last male sphinx didn't care,
Yeah.
and so I mean, obviously, conserving species is important. I will never say it's not. Um, and some species will go extinct for a variety of reasons. We have to determine whether or not it's anthropogenic, like as humans cause it directly, or because some species are going to naturally go extinct. Like honestly, I think elephants and rhinos, their lineages are dwindling. Now we've obviously helped in that part tremendously. Like it's not okay. Um, but like someone gave at this last talk gave a conference. I gave a talk on Lorraine just said blue kaique's natural, and I'm all I guess. And so the funny thing is, I learned from Matt is those blue mutations for a lot of birds are natural.
Yeah.
And I'm all I guess. I was talking with Jason Shane. I'm all I guess. Well, wouldn't like the blue yellow napes? Wouldn't they go extinct because they're blue because they would stand out more for predators or they wouldn't camouflage that well? And he's like, well, we're the predators. And I'm like, it makes sense.
Yeah. It is
Um,
true.
yeah. So it's very interesting how the hybrids or the mutations come about and like everyone's thoughts. No, the hybrid, and I was about to get with the chromosome stuff. Why I think cockatoos hybridize, and the cockatoo hybrids are beautiful. There's one I got from
Mhm.
Carrie Ellen, and one I got from um, Susan Hilliard, a
Mhm.
Galah citron hybrid.
I've seen that bird. It's stunning.
Yes.
I
And
mean,
so the funny thing was, when I was bleeding them, but Carrie Ellen was at both places with me. But when we were bleeding both, everyone was like, "Yes, take it," because apparently those birds are mean.
I
Um,
have heard that.
I heard that they're mean, which I'm like, yes, maybe I can find the bitch gene. Um,
that
which
I
might also be
I
re-
can remember,
oh,
Taylor, it's interesting that you've come so far with this information, because I remember, and I'm old, we gotta keep that in mind, but I remember years ago discussing, um, breeding using genetics for pet qualities. It happens with a lot of other kinds of pets, with dogs and cats, and it definitely happens. Not that I would advocate for that, but it was at one time a consideration.
so the way I would say this is, Carrie said Jesse is not nice. I have pictures of him, just like, and Carrie told me like put your face by the cage, and he's on the opposite side of the cage, and he just comes at you like a falcon or something with the claws first. And I'm like, yep, I see that. No, so all my research, so basically I focus a lot on the chromosome plots, but I need to know what's a hybrid, what's not a hybrid, so I can tell a proper story. And I like to double it by using museum specimens to create a reference, so we can say, oh, all the yellow-crested cockatoo, these yellow-crested cockatoos are pure versus these aren't. So if you want to start a captive breeding program, here it is. But the only thing I say genetics is you just want to make something not as little inbred as possible.
Yeah.
And obviously, any person that actually owns birds or breeds birds know the birds will do whatever they want. So you can put two completely unrelated individuals in a cage, and they may hate each other's guts. And so for me, it's a recommendation. Like when someone wants an unrelated bird, I'm all, oh, this person has a bird that's completely unrelated to yours, like by my metrics. Try it out. If it doesn't work, if it works, great. If it doesn't work, okay, let's find the next one. And then the next one. And then the next one.
Yeah, I mean, Joanna says here they used to get babies from the meanest rattlesnake scarlets, but they created the sweetest babies. Yeah, and I think that's part of it is I think it's vital information for us to have. So we know why this is happening, how this is happening, what's causing this to be the way it is. But, taking it that one step, when do we hit the island of Dr. Moreau?
And you know what? Some people say I would make a fantastic Marvel villain.
I would agree. I definitely would.
The Scarlet Witch. But I guess I want to show the next Centennial plot, which is the next slide, about the cockatoos, because why I think they hybridize. So this plot, they have a lot. If you look at the diploid number, and the red highlight is Kakatua, the gang has 69 chromosomes. Everything else has around 70. It's a little weird. But then when we go to the next plot, it's the red vented and the citron. Wait for the next plot. It's the chromosomes are incredibly conserved. So waiting for there we go. Incredibly conserved. And so the highlighted ones are the two chromosomes that I could find, or arguably three, that rearrange, which basically really is just one chromosome breaking into four parts. There's no translocations, there's no inversions, there's no real variation on a structural level. And this is between a Corella and a white cockatoo. And so we're going to be generating assemblies of, with Miguel's help, the Palm, the Galah, which I got from Sarah Barabs and Steve Duncan. And I'm imagining it's going to be the same. I'm imagining Paihura, which is, everyone knows I love Paihuras. I'm imagining because they mate like, they're, okay, again, I'm going to say this on here. They're horny little bastards. Sometimes I thought my maroon belly was trying to display to me, I'm all, are you displaying to me or do you want food? I can't tell the difference.
This is why we don't make good mates.
No, exactly. I'm like, I can't tell the difference. And I honestly imagine this structural stuff. I mean, so for me, it goes that macaws can hybridize, and there's hybrid macaws all over the place in the pet trade. But they don't occur in the wild, and because there is something that's selecting them out, more so than with cockatoos or Paihura. But with Paihura, and there's a later slide. I'm forgetting the order right now, unless I had it in front of me. Yep, actually, this is the one. Woohoo! I put it in the right place. So this is all the Paihura species, all 24, and so each color represents a genetic ancestry. So, like, let's say if you looked at mine, it would say African and white, and you could see, like, it would look almost be 50-50 in the coloration. So there's a bunch of ancestral species in Paihura that have come together in different, and you can see there's some solid purple ones, like, for example, there's some solid light blue ones. So there's some species that are still, like, they're solid, but that, let's say the green cheek clade, the green cheeks, the maroon bellies, the black caps, the pearlies, the crimson bellies, the blazed wing, which is not something anyone has in the captive breeding world. Someone does, please tell me you have a blazed wing. Are one of those admix groups where basically this difference between the species might just be how much of one old species they have versus another. And I think that's why we get so much variation within Paihura in general about their plumage. And then let's go on to the captive green cheeks, which is, I believe, the next slide. That, there's a bunch of color mutations in them. There's so many. I've always wanted a turquoise, but I never actually get a regular just turquoise. I had a cinnamon turquoise. God rest her soul. She was a bitch. Um, she was mean. She was very mean. I had a bird named Hera for a while, and she was the nicest ever. And then I realized I should have switched the names because Hera is the goddess of vengeance and mayhem, and that cinnamon green cheek I had was the goddess of vengeance and mayhem. Also, my first crimson belly, I nicknamed him Spawn of Satan because if Satan had progeny, it would be that bird. Which is probably why I fell in love with Paihuras so much. Besides the fact that there's so much variation. I mean, what Janice Boyd said to me before she died, you really like the Paihuras, don't you? Because I was obviously, the whole chromosome stuff with the macaws started because of Janice Boyd. And I'm like, yes, I will never give up my love for Paihuras because you know what? They're charmers. They're cute little charmers.
They are.
But the next slide,
So
I got a bunch of samples from Mark's place. And so the ones on the right are the pure individuals. And all those ones with the 4 colors are all birds from Rick and Mark's place. All different color mutations too. And so captive green, there's actually 2 of them in there. That one's from Spain, from Lolo Parque, and then one's a bird I had, Hera, that I got at a pet store because I felt bad for her when I walked into the store, and then I realized I can't walk into a pet store because I'll just buy all the green cheek. All of them. She's sitting in the back, and then I went a week later and she was still there, and then I went back another week and I'm gonna take you home with me. But the reason why I think captive green cheeks there's so many color mutations is because they're hybrids of a bunch of different taxa. So you're combining the genes, and on top of that structural variation that makes all these cool coloration differences. Someone asked me about Indian ringnecks at Parrot Fest because there's a lot of color. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm gonna wait till I finish my dissertation first before I start that research because that might be a combination of things. But there's a lot of, especially with the support of the breeding and the pet owners and the breeders and the pet owners and the pet store and the people that have people that own pet stores. I mean, I could not have this research or this knowledge or this data without any of them. And so I always want to thank you guys tremendously for that.
Well, I mean, the work
And
that you're
again,
doing though, helps us in the community. So it's definitely a give and take situation. So, when we talk about especially, the Payura, do you the color morphs, the different where are we going with that? Like what genetic mechanism causes those color morphs?
so I wrote. So the sad thing is, and so I guess maybe this will be maybe a dark note for some people because obviously we never want our birds to die. But when your bird dies and you take it to the vet for a necropsy, ask them if they have RNA later or to send me tissue samples because I wanted to do initial. I wrote up a grant and it was like basically I think this was one of the moments where like some of the faculty at U Chicago are very academic. They would love to have those academic debates about what is what. So there is a thing called um, transgressive traits, basically, or basically the offspring of a hybrid pair um, present a phenotype, and we'll just put like phenotype in a broad realm. It could be phenotype typically refers to what you see. So you are white, I am black. That is a phenotype.
Right.
That's a wild type green cheek. That's a dusky. Or no, that's not a dusky. That's a cinnamon. That's a phenotype. It can also be genetic. This gene is expressed more, and this gene is expressed less. That could be somewhat of a phenotype. And with the hybrid macaws, because like we were looking at, Carrie Ellen gave me a verde, and we're like, this orange in the verde, it's a scarlet and a bouffants. How does this orange come about exactly?
Right.
And so with the green cheeks, it's kind of the same realm because there's a lot of like combination traits. I mean, so I spoke with Rick Jordan about this one. There is one subspecies. It was called Pyrrhura molina hypoxantha, or it was also by its own species, Pyrrhura hypoxantha. It's the yellow-sided conure.
Huh.
And so one of the questions, because I do have at the museum, and that's the thing that's been taking me so while to get everyone's results back, because I'm processing everything together, and it's just like, I told one of my friends, if you weren't standing here right next to me, I would look at this, scream, and run away. Because there's just so many different taxa, and I'm trying to order it. Yeah, the mutations are just, I love the mutations. Like, some people ask me at AFA about the violet, which I will get back to you, or please, if you're here, message me. Because we're doing a bunch of things with color mutations, and we have a research scientist that does feather coloration. So please send feathers of normal and the mutation, because we're looking at both like the structural, like basically it's how the barbs change light, but also pigment. So that's how you get a combination of those colors. And when you add it on a variety of aspects, like I'm hoping that maybe one day we can actually figure out why we have the different shades.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a bunch of you, if you take each genetic concept by itself, like I'm not going to add them all up for you right now, because my brain would break myself. I can only imagine for everyone else. I could be just like, Taylor, you killed us all. Like, it's, yes, I'm the murderer. I mean, you can get more complicated. There's something called monogenic versus polygenic. Mono, one gene. So a trait that is caused by one gene, versus where I think the coloration comes into play is polygenic, but it's not just like a mutation of like one site, like what we would think. There's also that hybridization aspect. So potentially you might have lineages that have different genes, and then you have a mutant. So like it's things on top of each other, which I think is how we get this. I think that's how the Indian ringnecks have so much variation. It's a combination of things. And so I have a theory that the species that you have more color mutations, and thank goodness for breeders telling me like the blue budgerigard. The blue budgerigard is a very simple, maybe one or two genes change, and that's it. With the other ones, with the ones that go blue, it's probably the same thing, but you never know. So because biology has multiple ways to get to the same phenotype. But the species that have a lot of variation, the green cheeks, sun condors, which I think is the next slide, the Indian ringnecks. Yep. It becomes a combination of things. So sun conures and sulfur-breasted conures. Maybe some people didn't know that those were two different things. I didn't know until I was looking at specimens, and so we have we have a wild male sequenced. I am now trying to find purebred wild sun conures. I think I might have found them in Europe. I hope.
Okay.
It's actually, I haven't even looked up the endangerment status of Artiga maculata, but they look incredibly similar. And there are some sun conures that when I look at them, they look as dull. I wouldn't say dull in a bad way. I'm just saying dull in coloration as a sulfur-breasted. So a couple birds, I did some mitochondrial sequencing, and their mitochondrial region was not of the sun conure, it was of the sulfur-breasted. So those sun conures that are more yellow might be a product of hybridization with sulfur-breasteds.
Yeah.
And so again,
it's those things, those things that you point out that when you think about it in those terms, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You go, okay, well, all right, so that does make sense. It would, because there are some that you look at and you go, I have no idea where this came from. How did this happen? And what it comes down to is what you're researching. So, no, I think it's
and I mean, my funny thing is, I was talking to a potential postdoc advisor, and he was like, you really need to expand beyond parrots. I'm all like, oh, honey, like there are so many questions about the parrot just by itself. That's a whole career's worth. But yes, my interests have been taking all these things and expanding it beyond that. If anyone knows wood duck mandarin duck hybrids, please let me know. I'm looking for some live ones. If anyone knows any of these weird hybrids, like one of them is, I know I have to eventually figure out samples in Europe, like where to get them all sent to, because that cockatoo hybrid is apparently in Europe.
Hmm.
Yeah, that cockatoo hybrid, it's a Major Mitchell's and a Citron or Galop. I think it's a Major Mitchell's and a Galop. Yeah,
Is it privately owned or is it in a facility?
privately owned.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and obviously, like, you can see, like, again, all these colorations that we love in parrots, that people, the reason why people breed hybrids. And I've spoken with some people that breed hybrids that aren't necessarily comfortable talking to the community anymore because they were shamed back in the day. And I know some people have gone, "Oh, Taylor, why do you study hybrids? They have no conservation value." Well, they don't, but they do. The reason why, I mean, I love parrots beyond just the fact that I love parrots, but I love parrots because agriculture has created this beautiful, beautiful artificial experiment. Because macaws don't hybridize in the wild, as far as we know. But the
Mhm.
ones that we do see, let's say someone didn't really look at those hybrids that we see that occur, that a bunch of us are going, I guess, I think those are escape pets. I mean, I think because parrots are so popular in the pet trade, science tends to ignore them.
Mhm.
Also, CITES. I love the concept of CITES, but CITES has made things a little difficult for scientists and especially breeders that want to do, like, obviously you breed because it's a hobby and you're good at it, but also captive breeding provides an insurance policy for when something hits the fan.
Mhm.
So I've spoken with Ben Hennessy going like this. Okay, the blue throats, he doesn't agree that they should be necessarily released, but let's say a meteorite or a war hits Bolivia and somehow wipes out all the blue throats. We know how to. We have the populations to restock them in that case. Like, let's plan for the worst possible case scenario, and also, those animals are in our stewardship. We can't necessarily release them without trying to get them used to everything, so that we can release them. And so we are now responsible for them. And so I know one of my friends said about the whales in captivity. Yes, I don't believe we should have whales in captivity, but those. She said, "Oh, we should just euthanize them all." I'm like, no, like they took on the responsibility of that catching that animal, whatever, and so now they have to spend all the money to keep that animal alive and happy until its final days. That is my
Well,
opinion.
and I think you hit on a really important topic when we talk about breeding for conservation and science for conservation, and it can get very heated. The discussion can get very heated.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as breeding for conservation. There absolutely is. Science for conservation, knowing what that genetic material is so that you have that genetic material. And like you said, when the big one hits, which one never knows these days, when the big one hits, it's not all gone. It's not,
No.
um, or something like you said, something wipes out a whole population in a location. You know what the genetics are there. And I think I want to thank you for, bringing this science piece to the companion parrot community, because I think it's something that we need to know. We are, one of the only pet owner groups that has wild counterparts that there aren't a lot of pets that people have that you can go find a population of them still in the wild. And so I think we need to look at that, and we need to be very protective. We need to be, very careful and conserve, and respectful of all of aviculture and how we each play a part in that.
No, you're completely right. Like, I came into the community because I am a parrot owner. I love my parrots. Um, More than I love some people sometimes, which is maybe a problem. Um,
Yeah.
Parrots won't break your heart; they'll just break your finger because they bite you. Um, which I honestly say that's okay with me. Take my finger, just don't take my heart. Um,
Mhm.
but like, even let's say let's say a couple people here send me a sample, and we find out that it's a very rare population of some species. Then I would say, maybe find a pair for it, keep them as pets, but maybe try and get an offspring or two out of them so that at least they pass on their genes. But obviously, the bird's a pet. But at least we keep that lineage going. Like people can contribute to conservation in a variety of interesting, unique ways. And the funniest thing is, I know there are scientists that will come to an aviary and go, "I want to bleed a bird," and they don't care about the health of the bird or the fact that I went to Carrie's place. I came up from Carrie's last week. There was a Cuban Amazon that some of my collaborators wanted me to bleed, and the Cuban, she was freaking out. I got two toenails, but she was moving all over the place. So there was like a bunch of blood on her finger. That I'm like, oh god, I would have loved to have gotten that. And I was like, okay, she's stressing out. Let's stop. So we stopped a little premature. And I asked the next day, and then Will was like, I think she's too stressed out. Mom, okay, I get that. She was stressed out yesterday. I can totally see that she's stressed out. The galahs that I bled with Sarah Robinson, there was it looked like we walked out of a horror movie after that was done because the birds were like they were like I'm like this. If you stop moving, I can get this done faster because there are some birds that just like chill, drop, 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 done, good, you go. But obviously I can't tell them. The less you move, the faster this is gonna go.
Yeah, but you know what? People can train. You can train for a voluntary blood draw. A lot of it is a possibility. I've had people, oh no, no, no. Yes, you can. It's been done. It's been done very successfully. And so that's something that if you're out there and you're doing a lot of training with your birds, it might be something to consider looking into. But
so
we have, go ahead.
So I say I do toenail clips because I learned the back of the neck blood draw can be very dangerous. So if only a very skilled and trusted vet was there, I would let them do that. I have not been bothered to learn because I'm just like, I am not about to kill someone's bird. Because I know when my birds die, my entire lab starts reaching out to me going, are you okay? And I can only imagine what that would feel if like I was at Jan's place bleeding maroon bellied, and the maroon belly died in her hands. And then she goes, damn it, you want the body? And I look at Carrie and I go, I thought she was going to pull out a shotgun to shoot me because her bird just died when we were here sampling her bird.
But I think here is the fact that if you're really thinking about parrots and these wonderful creatures that come into our lives, whether we're working with them, whether we are having them as companions in our homes, and to be able for someone like her to be able to say, do you want the body? That's so that's we do need to wrap up a little pretty soon here, but what I wanted to say or ask you is how can people who are listening help you? What can we do as a community to help?
So, two things. And also, we touched on everything. Anything else in my slides was just extra figures on the same shit. Color mutations, hybridization, all that stuff. If you want to contribute samples, just reach out either regular EDTA tubes, and it can be just a couple toenail drops is good. Even blood on cards is good, depending on the text and the question. Let's say we just want a genotype to figure out where the bird's from, etc. If it's particularly rare, I might ask like, hey, I need a blood tube because I want to do the whole chromosome stuff. And then have it shipped overnight. Also, especially for any breeders here, people that have breeding pairs, documentation of your birds as best you can about relatedness, who's related to whom. This is the grandchild or the great-great-grandchild of the said bird that you also have or that I'm also sending. So that kind of information helps tremendously. So it helps with figuring out color mutations, figuring out hybridization, figures out, how it helps a lot. Okay. And so one thing I guess also we'll end on is there's programs to keep all that information for people. And so I'm trying to figure out a more user-friendly version than the version that like the zoos use. You're not going, don't have to have a PC, only a PC to run them, and it doesn't look like it's from 1990 because it still looks like it's from 1999 for Y2K. And so if you need any help trying to use those programs, I know Yafet knows also how to do the programs, and reaching out to me or him about that so you can have it documented. So especially you can keep it going. Where I am going to be contacting someone at U Chicago or somewhere around here about devising a program, an up user-friendly program that breeders can use.
Nice.
Um,
Okay.
and so all that, the recording of information and then providing blood samples helps. And then I will get them processed as soon as I can, but I'm on a one-man job right now.
And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, Taylor?
My email, which is,
There
yep, Nick is just on point. Yeah, he,
Nick makes me look
yeah,
good. That's what I always say.
yeah. So yeah, my email or Facebook. Email preferably, just because I use email like text message. Facebook,
Okay.
I'll tend to forget.
All right. Well, I so appreciate you coming on and sharing with us, and I want to thank everybody that asked some questions and listened. And it can be kind of like overwhelming, but I think Taylor did a great job tonight explaining things to us. I'm not going to say that you dumbed it down because you didn't, um, and I think it was really helpful. So a lot of good feedback. Ashley says that you need to make a trip to Virginia. She has a hawkhead, a brown-throated conure, mynas, maroon bellies, crimson bellied, and violets.
Okay,
So you
you
guys
know
need to
what?
look out for some.
I travel so much, and this last trip was tiring. But I am planning on making a trip to Virginia. I don't know when, but at some point I will.
Right. So you guys need to get in touch then. Ashley, get on that email and email Taylor and let him know where you are and how we can make that happen. But yeah, thank you again. And we will have you back because we need the continuing saga of Taylor's research.
So I mean, I am hoping. I guess I say hoping to graduate May 2025 and maybe May 2026. So within those years, I will make sure that AFA and ASA send out the Zoom link for my dissertation proposal. Because again,
Absolutely.
this research was not possible without anyone here. Both the samples and the knowledge, and Carrie driving me around constantly. You don't know how much I love her for that alone. Beyond other things. So yes, if you're a member of ASA, AFA, or if you aren't, you should be. Either one of them. The link, I will be making sure to share that link out for my dissertation proposal, but we should do something definitely beforehand.
Oh, we definitely will. All right. Well, thank you again. I just need to let you guys know out there. I mentioned the sale at the beginning. Next week, Lara Joseph and I are going to be on talking about training for enrichment. And it's for enrichment, as enrichment, how to use enrichment. I'm really looking forward to that. Lara and I have been talking about enrichment and training for a long time. And we're going to get to do it next Friday night, the 16th at 7 p.m. right here on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. So you guys take care. Taylor, take care. Keep on drawing that blood, and we will talk to you soon. Good night, everyone.